In November of 2010, teachers at the East Metro Integration District in St. Paul viewed a TED Talk by Sugata Mitra, who's done some interesting research on self-organizing learning environments using children and computers.
In Gateshead, I took 32 children, and I started to fine-tune a method. I made them into groups of 4. I said, you make your own groups of 4. Each group of 4 can use 1 computer and not 4 computers. Remember, from the hole in the wall. You can exchange groups. You can walk across to another group if you don't like your group, etc. You can go to another group, peer over their shoulders, see what they're doing, come back to your own group and claim it as your own work. And I explained to them that a lot of scientific research is done using that method.
We were going to learn about glaciers and their impact on Minnesota. And since the kids had no idea, background knowledge, I hadn't talked about glaciers at all, I put the question to them, what is a glacier? And then gave them about 5 different computers and told them they could go to a specific search engine site that gave keywords that were related to glaciers, and they were all kind of vetted, child-friendly websites. So the kids went to whichever computer they wanted to, and they could work in groups of whatever group size they wanted as well. They generally started with 4s. I had them choose one person they could work with well, and they started their search for what is a glacier.
We tried to figure out what a glacier is. So here's what we were working on yesterday. Our goal was to find out, what is it? Read it for me.
What is a glacier?
And then if you thought you had an idea, then I went around and I said, do you know exactly what it is? And then after we spent about 40 minutes, you told me your ideas, and then I wrote them all down. So I have all the information you told me yesterday here. But we weren't finished. There were some groups that said, I have kind of an idea, but I don't know exactly what a glacier is. And we also had a second question. So read the second questions. What did glaciers have to do with Minnesota's landforms? And then I thought I would remind you, such as the Mississippi River. Remember, we've made our 3D maps. You know about the landforms. So how are glaciers related to Minnesota's landforms? That's what you need to start working on today.
Okay, can we yell in the computer? Okay.
My turn.
No, it's my turn.
Oh, it's my turn.
So I found that they had a friend, a local accountant, a young girl, and they played football with her. I asked that girl, would you teach them enough biotechnology to pass? And she said, how would I do that? I don't know the subject. I said, no, use the method of the grandmother. She said, what's that? I said, well, what you've got to do is stand behind them and admire them all the time. Just say to them, that's cool, that's fantastic, what is that? Can you do that again? Can you show me some more? She did that for 2 months. The scores went up to 50, which is what the posh schools of New Delhi with a trained biotechnology teacher were getting.
Because I usually give really specific directions on use this tool, do it in this way, here's how it's going to look when you work with a partner, here's how you can talk to one another and help each other out. So I was nervous because I hadn't given that kind of explicit setup. I gave them the question and one website and gave them the freedom to choose who they were going to work with, where they were going to sit. And so I wasn't sure if it was going to be like running around the room, kind of super loud, all that kind of stuff. But they ended up handling it quite well. They were focused on, they were really engaged in finding the answer to the question. And some kids that I expected to have a harder time with it were really focused, more than I expected.
I did the So we're gonna search GLACIER
There was one particular group that ended up through the course of the session to be 4 girls working together. And all of a sudden, one of the girls, who sometimes has problems with friends, came up to me and said, I think I was just really mean. And I said, oh, well, what happened? And she said, well, I said something mean and all the people in my group left. I said, well, is that okay for them to leave? And she said, yeah. I said, well, I guess that's what happens when you're mean. And she wanted to fix it, so she chose the person that she had been the most mean to and went up to that person and apologized, and the 2 of them worked at a computer on their own for the next 10-15 minutes and kind of solved that on their own. And all I had to do was kind of repeat, oh, so maybe you were mean. Well, what are you going to do about that? And it was all in her court, and I didn't have to do anything. So that was kind of a nice social benefit.
The landforms that are destroyed by evil glaciers. Evil When is that over?
Guys, that need to be funny. Glacier, what it does with Minnesota landfill.
Oh wait.
I was surprised because at the end of the lesson, it took longer than 40 minutes, but at the end of the lesson, the groups had entirely changed from the beginning, how they had started in the beginning. And they had all found a video that showed glaciers moving and had a scientist explaining how they all got the idea about how the water melts down underneath the glacier and helps it to slide, and that it slides on a bed of water.
So what did you learn today that was interesting? Yesterday you told me all of these things. At the end we shut everything down and you told me everything that you learned. So what did you learn today? Is that okay? No, it's really not. So what did you learn? Pabon, what did you learn today? So you think that the glacier takes over the land? Interesting. Anybody else have something that they learned today? Olivia. So glaciers, oops, I can't. Glaciers flood, glaciers take over the land. What else did you learn today that's interesting about this? Jack.
When the ice melts, it goes down this tube, and the water takes the glacier, and then it slides and goes out to sea.
Yeah, that was so interesting because that's what I heard here yesterday, that the hole and the air and water go down, and then underneath is the water that's melted, and then that's how it moves 10 inches a day, right? That was really interesting. You are exactly right. What else is something that you learned today? So we don't have glaciers in Minnesota now. Do you think we had glaciers in Minnesota at some time?
Yeah.
Would it have been in the future or in the history?
History.
So, like 5 years ago?
No. Like
Hundreds of years ago?
thousands.
Thousands of years ago? So what do you think you might need to search for to find out what glaciers have to do with Minnesota? History? Minnesota history? Glacier history? What do you think?
Shall we do this? Maybe
Glacier and landforms? What else might you look for? Pabon. How did you want to type the whole question in? I wonder.
Can't type in a whole question.
I wonder if there's another place that we
You
can
can
type
only
in a
do
whole
one.
question.
You can only do one word.
Where could we go to that you can type in a whole question?
I don't know. Google.
Where? Google? Do you know of any other places where you can type in a whole question? askforkids.com, is that a site that you can type in a whole question?
Yeah.
Is it? Any other questions?
You.
Ask for Kids? Is that a place where you can type in a whole question? I don't know, is it?
No.
Is there a place, have you gone to that place before? Cool, so ask, what is it called? Ask for Kids, with the letter 4, or the number 4, or the word? So like this, ask for kids.com. And you've gone to this site before, Habon? And it's a place you can type in a question? Does anybody know another place you could type in a whole question? Casina. Yahoo, you can type in a whole question, Yahoo? Oh, I didn't know that. Huh, what else?
Just like on the regular computer,
A whole question? Like this whole question you could type in there? On the address bar? You can do that in the address bar? Oh, wow. Okay, we'll have to try it and see what happens. There might be another place. Maybe you could go to this one. I don't know. I think it's .com. I think Ask Jeeves. You might try. I don't know. Maybe you can put a whole question in there. So do you have some ideas of what you're going to try next?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and try. You have 5 more minutes, then we'll have to shut up.
If children have interest, then education happens. I think we've just stumbled across a self-organizing system. A self-organizing system is one where a structure appears without explicit intervention from the outside. Self-organizing systems also always show emergence, which is that the system starts to do things which it was never designed for, which is why you react the way you do, because it looks impossible. I think I can make a guess now. Education is a self-organizing system where learning is an emergent phenomenon. It will take a few years to prove it experimentally, but I'm going to try.
Alex, once I wanted to go to how'd you guys get onto here? Turned off the computer and turned it back on. Natural Histories Minnesota.
So some of the things I noticed were there was the interpersonal skills that kids needed. A lot of kids, he's not sharing the computer. And I said, well, you can go to another group. So they would deal with that. They would choose a different group, and that took care of a lot of social things. So they were learning some interpersonal skills. They learned how to use the search engine. They also, on another day, went in and typed the question that they were looking for the answer to, which was, how do glaciers impact Minnesota's landforms? And so they explored and found 2 or 3 different sites where you could type an entire question in and find an answer. So they were learning to navigate different sites on the internet. They were getting some base information about glaciers. I felt like this was a really good way to begin a unit of study as an exposure. But there was some misconceptions that they came away from that project with that we needed to address later. It was able to inform what I instructed on the following day. So the things that they learned were more interpersonal skills, how to navigate different websites, and they were excited. 3 of them went home and did more research on glaciers with their families and came in the next day to tell us what they had learned. So those were not planned things.